Awesome. Thank you so much, Pastor Kyle, Pastor Marcia. You really are blessed with some incredible leaders, guys. I'm telling you what. If I lived in Modesto, this is the church I would go to. These are the leaders I'd want to work for. You're in a great place. And let me just say how good God is. You know, I really do feel like He had a word for your church, for your people for sure. But as we talked with campus pastors on Sunday night, as I've been all weekend interacting with Pastor Kyle and Marcia, just really feel like there is a new season that you're entering into as a church. And what's happened here already is so incredible. I mean, when you think about you're 8 years in under their leadership, 6 locations, that's a big mountain you've climbed to navigate multi-site. Most multi-site churches don't go beyond 3 campuses because the complexities become just too much. The pain becomes too much. So the fact that you guys are at 6 campuses, you all not only love each other, but you like each other. It's a big deal. I've really sensed that this is a team that likes each other, likes being around each other, has fun. The health of this church and the health of this group of leaders is obvious. It's not everywhere I go. It very much is here. So what you have is very special. Doesn't mean there aren't challenges, tensions. We'll talk about some of that today, but I just hope you're appreciative. I think you are, of what you're a part of. But the future is going to be brighter than the past, as bright as the past has been. Only as you're willing to engage that future and continue to increase your pain tolerance and push into the more that God has in store for you, because there are so many more people that need Jesus in this community. And the last thing that this community needs, and all the communities that you represent here, is for this church to get comfortable with where it is. It's got to push into whatever's next, and that's why you're a leader, because you're willing to do that. 80% of all churches in America are plateaued or in decline. Only 16% grow, only 4% multiply. So you guys are already in that 4%, but don't rest there. Keep going, keep going. This is an incredible team. I've just been so impressed. Just been so impressed with all of you. The campus pastors. Obviously, Pastor Kyle and Marcia I've known, and I've always been impressed with them. Now even more so, getting to be in your space and up close with your team. But the campus pastors, I've just been so impressed by the quality of leader that you guys are. And then this team, just looking around this room, the young, sharp, up-and-coming leaders that are a part of this place. It's this group, it's this room, and your ability to reproduce yourselves, so not only the Sunday morning attendance grows, but that this room grows. That will determine your effectiveness in the future. But this is an amazing team. And, you know, every good team has 4 key elements. You can write this down maybe. 4 key elements at work in it. Number 1 is the person of the leader. The quality, the competence, the integrity, all the things that make up the person of the leader. If you have an unhealthy leader, it's very difficult to have a healthy church, right? If your marriage is unhealthy, it can be difficult to have healthy kids, right? It just all works together. So any team, and think about each department, think about each location, think about each subgroup and sub-team working on a specific project, whatever you define as a team, in this organization, the leader is critical to the success of that team. Vision is also critical. You've got to have something that rallies everybody together, that everybody connects to, that pulls the whole thing up. I think mission never changes. I think vision does change from time to time, right? And so vision is critical to keep everybody moving forward on the team. More important than vision is culture. You've heard that you know, culture trumps vision all day long, because you can have the best vision statement, the most compelling, clear vision ever, but if your culture isn't right, that vision can never become a reality. So culture is absolutely critical, and I sense that there's a strong culture here. My goodness, you have a lexicon. How many churches have a stinking lexicon, okay? So you have some very key cultural identifiers that help you shape who you are. And just walking onto this campus and interacting with all of you, very strong, very clear culture. But again, with culture, it takes constant gardening. It takes constant daily watering and nurture and attention to, right? That's a big part of it. And then the 4th thing, I think, this is personal for me, that I think every team has to have is accountability. We talk about that oh, obviously we all have accountability, but true accountability is rare. True accountability means you say hard things. You do hard things. You police one another in a certain regard. And so accountability, evaluation, these kinds of things, every team has to have them to keep moving forward. What I want to talk to you about today, we're going to touch on parts of all four of those things, elements of an effective team. And really my talk is kind of 5 stages of building. I've been basically in my full-time vocational life over the last 15 years, I've basically been in 3 places. I've been on staff at a very large church in Dallas. I've replanted a church and been a lead pastor of probably a middle-sized church. We grew pretty fast, but I was there about 4 years, and so about a mid-sized church, 500 or 600 people. And then now I'm in this national role, which often I feel like a fish out of water. It is different than anything I've ever done, and I've been in that role the last 6 years. So just for some context, I am responsible for 8 departments at the national office. All of them basically are connected to do 2 things: develop leaders and multiply the church. I think that's my assignment from God at the national office. One day he'll let us go pastor a church again, but for right now, our assignment is to help our fellowship develop more leaders and to multiply the church. So that's what we're working on. And as I look back, also our team is about 200 people around the country, and at various levels. Some volunteer, some full-time, and everything in between. We have large church pastors on kind of a board or a lead team. We have field team pastors we pay a stipend to. We have people in Springfield, and then people all over the country. So about 200 people on our team around the country. And when I look back at the pattern or the building that God has used me to do, I think this is now what I think is common for a lot of organizations. There are 3 constants. Or I'm sorry, 2 constants, 3 patterns that I see. One is change, the second is pain, and the third is progress. Change, pain, and progress. I think that's universal, especially the first 2. Anytime you're leading an organization and trying to do something that hasn't been done, you guys have been leading, you're starting campuses, you're breaking ground into new communities. Some of you are newly credentialed ministers, some of you are aspiring to be that. The change patterns in your life, change creates pain. That's why a lot of people don't like to change. It's painful to change. It's called growing pains, right? Because it's just the way, physically, like my teenage boys have pains in their body because they're growing. It's just normal to life. That's why a lot of churches don't grow, is because it's painful. It's easier to stay where we are, right? So change is constant. You may not realize it, but change is happening one way or another. Pain is constant. What is not guaranteed is progress. Change, pain, and progress. I like to think of, I used it with the campus pastors. I used it a couple years ago when I did a teaching for this staff. My framework for leadership is that leaders take people from here to there, right? The biblical example would be Moses leading the people out of Egypt and into the promised land. It was a 40-year journey. They couldn't stay where they were, right? God heard their cries. They were oppressed people, all of that. They couldn't stay where they were. God raised up a leader. And he articulated where the promised land was and where he was calling them to go. They had a picture of it in their head that kept them moving one step in front of the other for 40 years until they got to the promised land. Leaders take people from here to there. This is easy to look at and describe. This is very hard to do. That little line right there represents a whole lot of change and a whole lot of pain. What happened for Israel is a whole generation had to die before they could get to where God had called them to go. Right? And sometimes we're so afraid of losing people in our churches. We're so afraid of making hard decisions or having a hard conversation because we don't want to hurt anybody. But biblically speaking, God has a place he calls his people to go, and he will get them there one way or another, right? Whether we get to be a part of it, that's a different story. Change is constant. Pain is constant. Progress is not always guaranteed. Moses was the leader that caused them to go from here, but he was not the leader that got them there, was he? He self-ejected. He didn't make it in. His heart, he could not manage what was going on in his heart, and he wasn't obedient. God is taking one church from here to there. You're not there. You've not arrived. Sometimes we can think 6 campuses in 8 years, we've arrived. We're there. You're somewhere in here. You're not there yet. You're not where God has called you ultimately to go. And so we want to make sure we manage not only the organization, but we manage our own hearts. And really the health and the key for the organization in getting from here to there is how will each of you manage what's going on in your heart. There's what's happening externally, but more importantly, there's what's happening internally when you go through change and you go through pain. So for me, this framework of leadership, everywhere I've been, God has used me to help take wherever I've been from here to there. There's always been change. There's always been pain. And thankfully, so far, I've gotten to experience progress, but that's not guaranteed. Okay? So we have to manage ourselves well in order to make sure that we experience the progress that God has called us to experience. And so, sorry, my iPad went to sleep. There we go. So, rapid change, you're building something incredible here. Change creates tension. Tension can be painful, but tension can be healthy if you lead it well. A lot of leaders are afraid of tension. They're afraid of difficult conversations. They're afraid of the staff meeting where the elephant in the room gets pointed out, and how's it going to go if we disagree or if somebody gets their feelings hurt. And so what do? Most of us are not wired for conflict, so we avoid it. That just creates more conflict later. Every hard conversation that you avoid today creates 10 more hard conversations for you tomorrow, right? Think about in terms of raising your kids, right? So that you hear you're supposed to talk to your kids about sex when they're a certain age, 8, 9, 10, younger than I would have wanted to talk to them about sex, right? But you avoid that hard conversation, you're going to have harder conversations when they're 19, right? It's better to have it when they're 8 than when they're 19. Consequences go way up when they're 19, right? So same in the church and same on your team. Tension can be healthy if you lead it well. I think there's a sense in your leadership team here that God is doing something new. We're not sure what that is yet, but that God is beginning to stir. There's a new season. There's something new coming for your church and for your team. So what I want to do today is talk to you about what I've discovered in my life are in the teams that I've led, the 5 stages of building team, building organization, building towards the future, whatever you want to say you're building, that I want to talk about those 5 stages. I've identified 5 stages that I look back at my life. It's been helpful for me to think in terms of this framework because it has repeated itself time and again. And I think how I stumbled onto describing this process of building team and building organization is when I was sitting at home one day watching one of those shows on HGTV. Anybody like HGTV? Okay, we got some fans. I don't see a whole lot of men. Okay, 1. All right, thank you. Feel a little better. I am not handy at all. If I change a light bulb, I think there should be an article in the paper the next day that says, local man went the extra mile. You know what I mean? So, I can't fix anything. My solution is to call somebody. And so I wish I was more handy, but I'm just not. But for whatever reason, I'm drawn to these shows on HGTV. I love watching them. It's, first of all, they're mostly beautiful homes, like way more than I could afford. And they're always in Canada for some reason, it seems like. The Canadians are up there doing stuff. But all these shows are the same. What are some of the shows that are on HGTV? There's now 12 versions of the same show. It all started with Extreme Makeover Home Edition. Remember that one? It's been a long time. Was it Ty Pennington? Okay. So that was probably the first show. But what are some others that you watch now on HGTV that are kind of similar? Fixer Upper, Chip and JoJo. We like them. Yeah. Fixer Upper's good. House Hunters, good. That's on a different channel. It's a different channel. Love It or List It. I like that one. Love It or List It 2. A couple versions of it. Wasn't it Property Brothers? Yep, I like that one. Flip It or Flop, Flip or Flop. Right, so it's all of these shows that are basically kind of the same idea. You take something at one stage of the process. It's not the end result. And you go through an hour-long show. Some of them are 30 minutes, but most of them are like an hour-long show. And there's this beautiful reveal at the end. And there is a predictable pattern, if you watch, to every single show. Same things happen at the same time of the hour in every show. It's called writing. They write these shows, and it's the same pattern. It's all about building, taking a property from here to there, right? Now, you guys are building. You're building team here. There's very clear things you're doing to build that team. You're building culture. You're building new campuses, right? You're building a reputation in this community. Each of you individual leaders are building your own leadership reputation at this season of your life, right? You're building your own personal habits, your own sense of work ethic and who you are as a leader. What are some other things more specific that you guys are building right now as a church and as an organization? Maybe it's project-based. Maybe it's a ministry initiative. But give me some real-life examples that you guys would connect with in this room that you guys are building that aren't so macro-level team, culture, reputation. But right now in this season that you're in, you're building this. A leadership pipeline. Perfect. We've got a leadership school, right? We're building a leadership pipeline. Excellent. What else? What else are you building? Yeah, you're building systems. Every campus may be at a little different place in that journey and where you're at in building your systems, but you're always building more systems to scale and to sustain more growth, right? What else? What else are you building right now? A new lexicon. Yeah, we're adding to it. Yep. What else are you building? Small groups. Excellent. Perfect. Very few churches feel like they've arrived and they do small groups really, really well. For most of us, small groups is such a challenge because of people's time, right? I mean, not only church attendance, but then to ask them to do another thing is just really difficult. So we're building small groups. We're building volunteers. Anything else you would say right now this church is working to build? New believers, right? You're discipling all these people that raised their hand yesterday, and your ability to capture the lives of those 21 people and not let them fade into oblivion out there somewhere and lose them. That's very hard to do. At our church, man, we got really good at assimilation, or at evangelism. We were terrible at assimilation. We had to build the system for that. It was very hard. So you're all building things here. I think there are 5 stages of building at this church. Together, you may be in one part of this stage, and then individually at campuses, and then within campuses on certain departmental teams, you're all at different stages or points in this process, and the process repeats itself over and over again. And within one campus, you may have several things, again, at different places in this stage. But I want to break it down for you because, again, I think it relates to how we build things. There's 5 stages. Number 1 is the dream stage. When you look at one of these shows, let's take Fixer Upper, for example. Man, the first 5 minutes of the show is so fun. Everybody's smiling. The couple's holding hands. They're so happy, right? They've got a certain amount of money. They're going to get a new house, and they're just so full of excitement, right? And so they're just processing what could be. They're touring different properties and imagining what their dream home could look like. And at this stage, in the first 5 to 7 minutes of the show, there is low cost, high energy. Low cost and high energy. Not one penny has been spent yet. Nothing's on the line yet. We're just dreaming, right? We're excited. The future is going to be so bright. We're going to raise our family in this beautiful new dream home. And they're walking around, touring these properties. They're joking with each other. You know what I mean? They're just having fun. Every one of these shows, that's how it is in the first 5 to 7 minutes of the show. In an organization like this, when you're dreaming about the next campus, some of you, when you say, we're going to be church planters, there's nothing. We have a launch event where we're going to have 20 church planting teams in Dublin later tonight, and then the rest of the week. There's so much fun energy in that room, right? No money has been spent really, right? There's high energy. The couples are united. This is going to be such an amazing journey. We're going to reach the world for Jesus. They've not run up against a whole lot yet. There's nothing funner than when you feel called to say you're going to be a church planter and you start telling people you're going to be a church planter, right? It's like when you get pregnant, you start telling people you're pregnant. It's so fun, right? You haven't thrown up yet, right? You haven't been spit up on yet. You haven't had to wake up at 3 a.m. yet. It's like brand new. It's brand new. High energy. Nothing's been spent. No cost. Church planners, then they got to start raising money. Then they have a team member that leaves them before launch even happens. And all these things, it starts playing out. But right here, it's the dream stage, man. And it's like everything's ideal. I know exactly all of our values and systems and our vision statements. You haven't done one thing yet, but you got values and vision already and all this kind of stuff. You haven't met one person in the community, but you know how you're going to reach the whole town, right? It's this dream. It's fun. It's high energy, low cost. Then comes design. There comes design. There is high collaboration. If I could spell. High collaboration, low resistance. Okay? Remember when they go over to the farmhouse, JoJo's farmhouse. She sits down with the computer, and they got little muffins on the table for him, and everything's so beautiful. We're about 15 minutes into the show at this point, and they're talking about, do you want the wood beams or the French doors or the bigger ensuite and all these different, they're just designing. They're just playing around on a computer, designing where the walls are going to go, and they're beginning to have to make some decisions, but they're sitting there, they're eating muffins, they're at the farmhouse. High collaboration, low resistance at this point. I mean, every show is predictable. Every single one of them is like this, right? And they're beginning to choose colors. And again, they're still happy. They're still joking. And when you're in an organization like this, you say, we're going to plant the next campus. We're moving from dream to design, what the property is going to be, who the team is going to be. And you're sitting down in a staff room, and you're having conversations, and you're beginning to move some parts around. And what are we going to do for our budget? It's still fun. You haven't hit anything yet that's debilitating to you. Everybody is still generally on the same page at the design stage. Why do you keep doing that? All right, let me just pause for a second and get my iPad to cooperate with me. Sorry for the recording, all of you watching. Okay, now we're set. So high collaboration, low resistance in the design stage. Now, 3, this is really important. Tension. And in the tension stage, there's high resistance and low unity. Yeah, it's up in here. That's design. You start breaking stuff down. That's always fun. Tension, high resistance, low unity. I wrote too big. I'm going to be in trouble. That thing flipped? No. High resistance, low unity. What happens at about the halfway point in the show? It's about 25 minutes into the show, right? They find black mold. There's a crack in the foundation. The sewage has to be moved from one side of the house to the other, and it's going to cost $8,000. It's going to cost $12,000. Now he's going to lose his man cave. Now they're going to lose the French doors. Right? A big decision has to be made. What does Joanne say? She said, Chip, you got to call them and let them know that I don't know if this is going to work out. We're going to be over budget. This is bad news. And like you can feel the tension rise as you're watching the show. Maybe this will be the one episode they don't finish the house. Maybe this is going to be the one project where the couple splits up and they it gets written about in the papers and it's all going to fall apart. They're never going to make it to the end of the show. They go to commercial break halfway in. You don't know what's going to happen. Oh my God, are they going to make it? Right? Are they going to be able to build this house, or is it all over? And they build the tension into every single show. Well, we know what tension is like in a church, right? We're going to go from 1 to 2 services. That's tension. We're going to launch a new campus. What's that going to do to this campus financially, attendance-wise? There's tension. This volunteer is not cooperating. We're allowed to fire volunteers. What do we do with this person? Like, there's tension that arises. You have a disagreement on the campus pastor team about what we're going to do next. And so tension creeps in at some point as you're building team, as you're building culture, as you're building your reputation. Maybe the campus pastor, the lead pastors ask you to go from one position in the organization to another position in the organization, and you're not sure if you want to learn to play a different position, right? All 3 of my boys play travel baseball. Any travel baseball families? Did you grow up playing? Did your kids play? Okay, so the travel baseball is the worst collection of human beings known to man. It's a bunch of upper middle class people who have a lot of money to spend on putting uniforms on their kids and taking them around to all of these places, and they all think their kid is going to be the next prodigy, the next big thing when they're 10 years old, right? And so they all have my kid's going to pitch and play shortstop. Of course he's going to pitch and play shortstop. None of you other kids are as good as my kid. So what happens, tension arises on the team when all of a sudden the kid has to play right field. All of a sudden, the kid has to play first base when all he wants to do is play shortstop, right? And the parents go to the coach, and there's massive tension. My boys have played on so many teams over the years. This has played itself out on every single team they've ever played on. People don't want to play a different position. People don't want to have to change. They don't want to have to do something different than what's in their mind to do. That happens time and again in the culture and context of a church. You have to switch positions. You have to learn to do a different thing. You may have been the leader today, but now you're serving the leader tomorrow, and you have to have a different seat on the bus because it's about the vision and what God has called us to do, not my personal comfort or preferences. Tension, right? Tension finds its way to the surface over and over again. And this is the critical part of building, is how do we deal with the tension. In those seasons, there's high resistance. You feel it. Sometimes it's spoken, sometimes it's unspoken. Sometimes the way you know you have tension is when you see somebody coming down the hall and you want to turn left and avoid them. It's tension, right? And there's low unity. You can just feel we're not as unified as we used to be when we were 3 campuses. Remember the good old days? Remember when we were just 3 campuses? Man, we're all on the same page. We'd go over to Bethke's house all the time. It was so good, swim in that pool, get in that hot tub, eat their burgers. Man, now we never go over to their house anymore. Like, we never do stuff. Like, I feel like I don't even know them. You know what I mean? And just tension. Now we're at 6 campuses. What do you think? We're a mega church now, right? And then we start talking about more campuses or reaching more people, and we start thinking, what's that going to do to me? Low unity. You can just begin to feel it. And then there's stage 4, which is resolution. And this just flips. There's high unity, low resistance. It's pointless for me to write this way. High unity, low resistance. The key, let me just go ahead and give it to you. The key of being effective as a team and as an organization is learning how to constantly navigate getting from stage 3 to stage 4. Anybody can do this. This isn't hard. This is fun. This is easy. Anybody can dream and design, right? Not anybody. It's so rare that we as leaders are able to lead our teams from tension to resolution without a ton of bloodshed, right? High unity, low resistance. And let me just get to the 5th one, which is the result, the big reveal at the end. At this point, they come back from commercial. Oh, the black mold, it wasn't actually black mold, so it turns out we're going to be okay. Or we found a easier solution for the septic system, so it's only going to be a $2,000 change and not a $20,000 change. We get to keep the beams in the kitchen and all of that. Everybody's happy again. We resolved whatever tension there was, and it's inevitable. It happens every single time, right? The contractor comes in. What are we going to do? I'm not sure what we're going to do. And the couple, seriously, they start arguing. I'm not giving up my man cave. Well, I'm not giving up my French doors. Well, I'm definitely not giving up my man cave. Well, I'm certainly not giving up my French doors. And they're going back and forth, and you don't know what's going to happen. And then there's the resolution. They come up with a creative solution, and most of the time, everybody wins, and there's resolution, and they're back to building. They move to the result, and at the result, this is organizational, high momentum. And more importantly, high credibility. What happens when you as a team, this whole room, learn to go from tension to resolution is everybody that comes to this church, everybody that gives to the mission of this church, everybody that wants to or is thinking about giving their time to be a part of this church sees, I can trust this team. This team has high credibility. I have seen them lead through difficult things and come out the other side liking each other, reaching more people, doing more ministry. There's high momentum in the church. You can feel it. But more importantly, there's high credibility and trust in this team and trust in each other. Because when you see you can work through things together and still like each other on the other side, what that tells you is we can take on the next thing. We can take on the next challenge, and we're going to be okay. We're still going to be healthy. Healthy churches don't want to lose that quality about themselves. They want to keep being healthy. When you go from tension to resolution and you do it multiple times, it increases the trust on the team, and you realize we can do this again and again and again. I would guess in this organization, you're at multiple places in multiple projects and ministries and campuses on this deal. It's really good for you to be able to know where we are, anticipate what's going to come next. The great thing about the design, if you understand this framework, when you're in the design, you anticipate tension. You're not surprised when it comes. You recognize what it is, and you begin to understand, oh, we just have to find the way to move to resolution. So, I guess what I want to do with the rest of the time is talk to you about the 3 things that I've found help move from tension to resolution. Because that's the key. That's the key. The big reveal, you pull the thing back in the house. They're walking through the house in the last 5 minutes of the show. It's beautiful. It's their dream house. No one's talked to them about taxes yet. It's all amazing. And so high momentum, high credibility. Chip and Joanna have high credibility. They pulled off another one. You know what I mean? And so you can see the pattern plays out in churches too. 3 things that help us to get from tension to resolution in my experience. I'll go ahead and give all 3 to you, and then we'll break them down. Trust, communication, and initiative. It's not brand new ideas there, but I'm telling you, this doesn't play out that easily in most organizations where they exemplify those 3 things. Trust, communication, and initiative. Let me break them down. Number 1, trust is crucial in moving from tension to resolution. A complex environment, which, by the way, you have, 6 campuses, is a complex organization. In a complex environment, trust in the team is essential. Here's what I mean by trust. You can be trusted to go the first mile. There's a lot of second mile people out there. They want to write the killer song. They want to develop the new set. They want to preach the message. They want to be in the spotlight. They want to be on the stage. They want to have the next big idea. They're second mile people. But a lot of second mile people fail to go the first mile. They don't respond to email. They don't show up to work on time. They have a poor work ethic. They don't have the right attitude. It's just basic first mile stuff. In the world we live in, where there's so many people coming from broken homes, they've not had a mom and dad at home being raised up. So many, some young men and women, Gen Z is entering the workforce in the next few years. Many of them have a different idea of work ethic. What I've realized is they don't have necessarily a bad work ethic, but the work ethic that they understand and the work ethic of boomers or Gen Xers is vastly different. And so you do need a lexicon. You do need an understanding of what we mean by work ethic. What are the first mile things that matter around here? For me, I tell them, listen, if you can't respond to email within 24 hours, don't try to come to me with the biggest new idea for CMN. You know what I mean? Like, let's focus on how can I trust you with the simple things. Go the first mile before you try to go the second mile. You can be trusted to get the job done. Again, we're not talking about, are you going to take my lunch out of the staff refrigerator? I don't know if I trust you that you're not going to take my lunch. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. That's not the kind of trust we're talking about. We're talking about the kind of trust where you have an assignment that we both agreed upon, a deadline that we both said is the right deadline. Can I trust you that you're going to meet that deadline and get that job done? We're talking about every level of the organization, all the way down to your every other week volunteers here. What kind of trust do you have in one another to get the job done? So as it works with a campus pastor, a senior leader, or a team leader, if they've got 5 plates they're spinning, and they give one of those plates to you, right, to a project, and they say, okay, by February 1st, this is going to be brought to completion. And that assignment is made in November. And here we get to the first of the year, it's January, and you as the senior leader haven't heard back from them on where you are in that process of getting that task done. Now all of a sudden the senior leader has to pick that plate back up. They have to start spinning it again. They're beginning to worry about, am I gonna have to dive in and do that myself? Because they're not quite sure you're getting the job done. No communication is happening, and so trust is being depleted. Or you have a pattern of not hitting it. Okay, you have a pattern of not doing even the smallest task to get the job done. It depletes the trust that you have. And what happens in my heart anyway is when people start over and over again making the same mistakes, I can't trust them to do the basic stuff. I'll find someone I can trust. I'll just move on and find someone I can trust. And now, why would I pay you? Right? I know that's harsh, This is the way the mind works. This is the way the heart works. Trust is critical. You got to be trusted to get the job done. You've got to be trusted to set the right tone. What's your attitude like? What's your tone, right? That's another one. You got to be trusted to have the right attitude. Attitude and tone, it's the quickest way to lose influence if you have a bad attitude. It doesn't matter how talented you are. I can work with somebody less talented with the right attitude. Isn't that the truth? I mean, all the way around. Don't you want someone that's just energetic and positive and not a complainer and not a life taker, but they're just like, we can do this. Come on. It's like a Jonathan's armor bearer type of, we can take that hill if God's with us. Let's go. I'm with you. I'm with you. Man, I'll take that all day long. Attitude and tone is the quickest way to lose influence, but the best way to stay in the room. This is all you young leaders out there. You want to stay in the room, on the team, and keep growing in this organization? Man, have a good attitude. Be a life speaker, not a life taker. And your leaders will find a way to keep you on the team and in the room, and you'll grow in your influence over time. For me, I've learned I've got to guard my heart, not my circumstances. This has been a life principle for me. My flesh is to guard my circumstances. Try to control the things that I can't control. Try to dictate and maneuver and guard my circumstance. I don't want to do that job. I don't want to play that position. And I'm going to talk to other people and try to go around and get the result that I want by a bunch of gossip or whatever, right? But I've learned I can't guard my circumstances. That doesn't lead to health. I've got to guard my heart, right? It says in Proverbs, above all else, guard your heart, because everything in life comes from that. In this organization, as you go into the next season with all the change and the pain that may come with it, I'm just going to encourage you, write this down and remember that this guy from Missouri came and said it to you one day. Guard your heart. Don't cling tightly to your circumstances. Control what you can control, and you can always control your heart. Guard your heart, not your circumstances. Trust. You can be trusted to have your house in order. I'm going to step on some toes, and I'm just going to get real personal if that's okay, because I've just seen this play out too many times not to say it to you in this organization. You've got to be trusted to have your house in order. Here's what I mean by that. Have your health in order. Now, there's some things you can't control that happen in your body, that happen with your physical health. I'm not talking about that stuff, right? When you're sick, go to the doctor. Get uphill and get well and get back to work. I used to think, man, I'm not going to ever go to the doctor. I'm just going to like ride it out. I'm going to tough it out. I'm going to keep showing up to work. Now I've got 5 more people sick. Now my 3-day deal is now a 2-week deal. Now I've missed all this time when it could have just been a day or 2, and I've messed up the team. I've slowed down the progress. If you're somebody that finds yourself constantly sick, constantly with a certain issue, it's over and over and over again, people will have sympathy for you, and they will have empathy for you, and they will care about you, and they will pray for you, but they'll stop trusting you because you're just not there. That's hard to hear. It's hard to hear. Do what you can do to take care of your physical health. Don't be too prideful to go to the doctor. Don't be too prideful to get on a medicine. Don't be too prideful to take a day off or 2 days off to get your body right and get back. And don't be repetitively sick. I've had employees, they're just sick all the time. They don't get it taken care of. They don't go to the doctor, and their teammates stop trusting that they can count on them to be a critical part of the team. I've just watched it, and the trust goes down. This is not easy to say. It's not easy to hear, but I've seen it play out time and again. Do what you can do to control your physical health. Get well. Take care of your health so you can be a productive member of the team, and your teammates trust that you're going to be present every day and getting after it, doing your job, pulling your weight. Have your family in order. The problem that we have with this is we try to run yesterday's playbook for today's game. The game changes, right? As hard as it is to say, LSU developed a new game plan to beat Alabama because it hadn't worked in 8 years. And let me remind them, it hadn't worked in 8 years. Roll Tide. But they changed their game plan because it's a new day. They couldn't just run the ball up the middle and think they were going to beat Alabama. They had to throw it all over the field. When it comes to our families, what you did before you have kids is not going to work now that you've got 3. The prayer life, the margin that you have, the Sabbath that you take, the intentionality that you have in your marriage, all of it. You can't think like you're newlyweds anymore. You can't think like you have one kid that's 3 anymore. Now you got teenagers, and there's a whole bunch of them, right? You got to do things differently in order to maintain the health of your family and of your marriage. So make sure that your shoulders are growing, your capacity is increasing, and that happens by spending intimacy with Jesus and communication with your spouse to make sure that you're doing. I have had to totally reshape our whole family rhythm these last 6 years. I pastored a church, I never traveled. Now I work in this role, I'm gone every week. I've had to have a whole new different approach to marriage and family in order to stay healthy and do what God's called me to do, in order to be here and give you my very best. There's things I have to do before I come. There's time I have to take with my kids and with my wife before I come. There's prayers we have to pray. There's conversations that we have to have so I can show up here and be at my best. Why does that matter? Well, it matters for the 21 people that got saved, right? It matters for them. So all of us have to have our house in order. And let's not buy into this thing that you either have to have a healthy marriage or a healthy ministry. And if you ask me what I'm going to have a healthy family. The pendulum has so swung to margin and health in my family. Why? Because the pendulum was way back here 30 years ago. And most of us came from homes where we never saw our parents because they were married to the church, not our mom or our dad. The church came first, not their relationship with us as kids. And we resented that, and we came into ministry. We made it to ministry, number one. We made it loving Jesus, but we said we're never going to do that. And the pendulum swung so much that we think it's a choice that has to be made between marriage and ministry or family and ministry. You don't have to make it. God calls you to do both well. But to do both well, you can't run the play from 10 years ago. You got to develop more maturity, more capacity. I've seen it time and again with people that have been on the team. They're just so torn. Their spouse is pulling them in a direction that they're complaining, and they're saying the church is taking all your time. Why are you going to go to that men's breakfast on Saturday? Why are you going to do this and do that? And they feel torn from their church or their pastor. They feel an expectation they have to be there, and they're just torn. But the deal is they've not done the intentionality to take their family on the journey and communicate with their direct reports to make sure both are happening well. Both can happen well. In this organization, you have 2 senior leaders that deeply care about you and your family. But we also have a mission and a mandate to reach people, and it's going to take everything we have. I'm challenging you, have your house in order so you can do both well. It's trust. That's a trust issue. Then finances. Have your finances in order. So you young leaders, please don't make the mistakes that some of us made 20 years ago when we started out. Get your finances in order. Here's what happens when you don't have your finances in order. You agree upon a salary here at the church, and you're happy with that salary. 6 months goes by, 9 months goes by, you bought a car you shouldn't have bought, you bought a bigger house than you should have bought, you're overextended, you're getting into some debt, and what do you think? The first thing you think is, I need a raise. I need more money. The truth is, you need to be a better steward, but what you think is, you need more money, and so what do? You don't want to ask Kyle and Marcia, but then because you won't ask them, and because you know you really probably haven't done anything to justify a raise, you start resenting them. Can you believe we're going to launch a 7th campus and I still get paid what I get paid? Are you joking? Do you not even see me? Do you see how that happens? Well, really? We're going to hire another staff person? I still don't have enough goldfish in the kids ministry, right, to feed everybody. And so you start assuming things, you start thinking thoughts that aren't right, and the devil begins to have a foothold in your finances. And what you do is you project your lack of stewardship on the church, and you resent. I've seen it happen time and again. I've felt it myself. I've been there myself. And what I needed to do to be trusted by God and trusted by my senior leaders, I need to get my finances in order. So I could do what God's called me to do, and not every 6 months think I deserve more money, right? Trust. I'm trying to break it down so you can see how it plays out at the nitty-gritty, deep heart level. And then are you able to be trusted with the vision? Are you a barrier or a bridge? You've got to think like an owner. Every level of the organization has to think like an owner. So trust is huge. Second, communication. Communication is such a big deal. We know this, right? We always talk about how important communication is in our marriages, in our relationships, on our teams. But time and again, it breaks down. And the research will show where most teams get sideways is they fail to have good communication as they grow and as they scale. So communication is absolutely essential. And one of the best leadership teachings that I've ever received from Pastor Scott Wilson, Pastor Kyle knows him well, is how we handle this issue. There's a gap between expectation and performance. Okay? It's the greatest leadership teaching I think I've ever heard. It works for every relationship you have. It works for your family, your marriage, everybody you interact with. The gap between expectation and performance. We all have expectations on the people around us. You have expectations of your kids. You have expectations of your spouse. You have expectations of your employees. You have expectations of your bosses. We all carry with us, a lot of times they're unspoken, we all carry with us expectations. But then there's the reality or the performance. It doesn't meet that expectation, right? For example, if I tell my wife as I leave the house one morning, hey, I'll be home at 5. I know the kids have baseball practice at 6, so I'll be home for dinner, and then I'll take the kids to practice, home by 5. I'm getting to practice at 6. Good? Good. Awesome. I go to work. It's 4:15, wrapping up my day. Someone walks into my office, says, Pastor Chris, I've got to talk to you. There's an emergency. I look at my watch. I know I'm supposed to be home by 5. It's a 30-minute drive home. If I take time to do this, I'm not going to get home on time. But, I've got a bleeding heart. I'm a pastor. I care about people. So I say, okay, come on in. And that short little 10-minute conversation turns into an hour. Their emergency, I've just made my emergency. And all of a sudden, I'm late getting home. I'm really late getting home, right? I'm scrambling to get out the door. I'm barely going to make it home in time, maybe to even get them to practice. That's bad, right? My performance did not match the expectation that was set. Now, how many times does this happen in your marriage? How many times does this happen with your friends? How many times has this happened in a church, right? Time and again, expectation in the performance. The wider the gap, the more frustration there is. If you're feeling frustrated with anybody in your life right now, I mean anybody, most likely it comes back to this, expectation and performance. Either you're not meeting what you know is their expectation, or they're not meeting what is your expectation of them. If you're frustrated with anybody, it most likely has to do with this gap. The goal then is to shrink the gap between expectation and performance. Go back to the illustration of me with my wife failing to be home on time. What could I have done to shrink the gap between expectation and performance? I could have called her. I could have texted her. I could have DM'd her on Instagram. I could have done almost anything to let her know I'm not going to be home on time. That gives her a chance to compensate. I could have said, okay, get the boys fed. I'm going to swoop in 10 till 6. I'll get them to practice. I'll just eat when I get home. Don't worry about me. Now we got a new plan. Now I've communicated. Her expectation had to come down, right, to meet that particular performance. But the frustration is gone now because now we're on the same page. Now, if I do that day in and day out, make everybody's emergency my emergency, constantly getting home late, now we're going to have a different conversation, or she's going to have a different conversation with me, right? As a leader, how do you know which it is? How do you know whether your expectation has to come down or their performance has to go up? The only way to know is if you communicate. Honestly, openly, transparently, hot communication. It's the only way you can know. Sometimes your expectation as a leader does need to come down. You're going to have a staff member say, man, Pastor Chris, here's the deal. My mother-in-law just moved in with us. She's had cancer. It's been a real challenge for us. And then, I've been in my master's degree. I had like 2 massive papers that I have to write. Is there any way we could move that deadline from February 1st to March 1st? I just need a little bit of breathing room. Now, I'm going to go, absolutely. There's absolutely no reason we can't do that. The February 1 was just what we thought best in November, but we can easily move that
to a March one, and now I've lowered my expectation on the deadline to meet their performance. But it could be, you know what? I've seen this play out in you too many times now. It's not just these situational things. You have a problem meeting deadlines. You seem to have a problem managing your time. We've talked about it before, remember? I can't move that deadline. I either have to assign someone else this deal, or you're going to have to make the change. Performance has to go up. This is the job of a leader, and it's responsibility of everyone on the team to communicate. We don't communicate because we say, oh, Pastor Kyle's so busy. Pastor Marcia, they're so busy. I don't want to bother them with this. That's a cop-out. We're all busy. It's all relative. Your job is to communicate what needs to be communicated and let them make the call and make the decision. Vice versa with the people that work with you and all of that. Communication closes the gap between expectation and performance. We can't read each other's minds. You're not too busy. Serve your leaders in this way and communicate. Find out what the best mode of communication for them is. I'm sure it's in the lexicon, but no, is it text? Is it Facebook? Is it calling? Most of us don't like phone calls. Like, I don't want to get a phone call, right? Text me, whatever. Find out what the best modes of communication are, but communicate and don't let this frustration linger. It'll undermine your team. It'll undermine what God's called you to do. Speak the truth in love, always in your communication. Finally, initiative. Moving from tension to resolution, initiative is absolutely key. You got to close the gap between problem and solution. I've talked about this before, I think, with this team. But one of the key jobs of a leader is simply problem solving, right? A lot of us see problems, but not enough of us bring solutions. The people that I love on my team are the ones that bring me problems I don't know about and don't drop them on my desk. They bring me the problem and 3 potential solutions with the problem. My trust in them goes so high, their value to the team goes way up. And if you can train the people in your campuses and on your teams to see problems, but not just that, to bring solutions, oh man, watch how fast your campus will grow, because that's such a key skill. And maybe most important skill in every context is problem solving. You guys watch Shark Tank? I promise I don't just sit around and watch TV. But Shark Tank I like to watch with my boys, right? Entrepreneurs, and they're bringing these innovative things, and the debate back and forth in the Shark Tank is so cool. But every single person that comes into the Shark Tank is trying to do what? They're bringing a solution to a problem they've seen in the world. And the degree to which their solution actually solves a problem and it makes sense depends on whether they get funded and whether they get the money. At launch this week, we're going to do Shark Tank. So I'm going to give you guys an advantage, a head start. Those of you that are coming to launch this week, is you're going to have a chance to pitch your ministry plan and the vision of your church to our sharks. And the winners, like, they get stuff. They get money and stuff. So go ahead and get your vision ready, because you're bringing a solution to a problem you see in the community. And the degree to which you can communicate that clearly depends on whether you get funded and the mission gets advanced. Lots of people are good at seeing problems. The best team members see solutions. People that change the world solve problems. It takes initiative. It takes initiative. It takes, like, that's not my job. That's somebody else's job, right? And let me break it all the way down for you. So I remember at the church when we were pretty new, I've been where you campus pastors are, and we had a property. It wasn't great by any stretch, but man, we were going to make it look the best we absolutely. And man, walking your properties, you guys get this. You have made your properties look the very best it possibly can. But I remember one of our young team members. We got to the church at the same time. He gets out of his car ahead of me. We're walking down the sidewalk into the church, and he walks right past a candy wrapper on the ground. Right past. I know he saw it. He couldn't miss it. It wasn't stuck in the bushes. It was on the ground. And I was just like, I can't believe that sucker just did that. So I bent down. I picked it up. I found him. I said, what in the world? I know you saw this. We all have to take initiative to do what needs to be done to make this thing go the way it needs to go. Everything is everybody's job description. We get it done together. It takes initiative. I would rather correct somebody's mistake than have to motivate somebody to do their job. I'm not paying anybody that I've got to motivate. I'd rather people take initiative, mess it up. We can work with mistakes. We can't work with no initiative. Key to gaining or losing respect and influence is your ability to solve problems. The people that come to your church, they see the problems in this church. They see them. They wonder if you see them too. Go ahead and say it out loud. Listen, we know this is an issue. Our team's working on this issue. It's going to get fixed. They know if one of the toilets overflows every Sunday. Now, if they'll give you a week or two, it happens to all of us. But 3 months from now, if that stinking toilet is still overflowing, they're going to be like, why would I give money to this church? Why would I give my time to this church? It's sewing into a purse with holes in it. They can't even fix the toilet. They're not going to know how to use my time. They're not going to know how to use my money. Bathrooms are dirty. Grass isn't mowed. You got the same mean person at the kids check-in every week. Right? We do whatever we can do early on. But, man, you got to solve these problems. And people will quietly leave your church, or they'll come and they'll never give. They certainly won't serve because they've seen the problems around here for too long and you haven't solved them. You gain credibility when you solve problems. You gain influence. Take initiative. This has been big for me in the last couple years. And I'm about to be done, Kyle, so don't be mad. Take initiative to choose joy. Psalm 118:24, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. I preached on Sunday, put yourself in a position that requires faith. I preached that because I've done it in my life. I've been scared to death. I've faced giants. I've walked out into the valley not knowing what my weapon was going to be. I've put myself in a position that has required faith. I haven't always done it gracefully. A lot of times I've put myself in a position that requires faith, and I've done it kicking and screaming. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to get to the miracle and look back at how you behaved before the miracle happened. I've been ashamed at times of how I've stood out in that valley. Feeling sorry for myself. Maybe enough faith to get myself to the valley, but not enough faith to stand there gracefully. Not enough faith to do it with joy. Let's be a church and let's be people that not only learn how to put ourselves in positions that require faith and start new things, but to do it with joy. That's different. That's different. Finally, take the initiative to do your best and love well. All you can do is your best. And you can always love well. I've been known at times in my life for being very strategic, very visionary, good team leader, gets things done. Man, that Chris, one thing he does, he gets things done, that guy. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But now at this stage in my life, at 42 years old, you start thinking a little bit differently. You can kind of see the finish line out there on the horizon a little bit more, and you kind of get to the halftime of your life, and the things you loved being known for in your 20s and 30s all of a sudden don't matter as much after a certain age. And those of you that are past that certain age, you know what I'm talking about. You don't want to be at your funeral one day going, oh man, that Chris, he sure knew how to get things done, right? Boy, we never missed a deadline with that guy. No, you want to be known for, man, I can't remember all the stuff we did, but I remember how I felt around him. Man, he loved me so much. He loved my kids. He loved my family. Man, he was so kind to us. I wasn't always the best employee, but man, he always made me feel like $1 million. That's what we want them to say at our funeral. It was Pastor Tom, Pastor Scott's dad. It just hit me hard when I was at his funeral in August. And he was talking about one after another, how well he loved. And it kind of changed me. It was just a few months ago. Going, you know what? I want that to be how they know me one day. I want to take initiative at this point in my life to be known for how I love. This church is already known for that. Keep it up. Just keep it up. Love people well. If you do those three things, trust, communication, initiative, you're going to better navigate the tension and get to the resolution and eventually the result that God has called you to. Amen? All right, let me pray for you. Father in heaven, I'm so amazed by this team you've put together here in the Central Valley. They are incredible. Each called by you, each with a unique story and background and journey that they're on, each with incredible faith and love for people. I thank you that you've assembled them for such a time as this. I thank you for all they've accomplished together, Lord. But I also thank you that their hearts and their hands are wide open to what you want to do next here in the Central Valley through the ministries of One Church, and how they're committed to playing the role that you've assigned them to play right now. Prepare them, God, for the tensions that come. Prepare them to lead through that with everybody in this organization. Give them eyes to see what you have for this church next, and let them to go together full of faith, full of joy, full of being known for love, and leading through this tension to get to resolution and to see so many more people come to faith in you. I pray for all of the kids and the grandkids represented by this room. Give them a front row seat to what faith looks like as they lead together here at One Church. And we just pray, Lord, as we do what we can do, you'll do what only you can do. You'll bring the miracle. We pray that in the name of Jesus. Amen. Hey, guys, it has been such a blessing to be with you guys this weekend. Love you guys so much.
That was so good, and I don't want to rush out of it. And so for 3 to 4 minutes, one of the things we work really hard on is making sure that we give people time to go to the next meeting, because we are not good about it, Kyle and I. So, but 3 to 4 minutes, like, what's your takeaway? What stood out? What was your...
I'm the runner.
Okay, perfect.
I love the fact of a great leader brings not just the problems, but 3 solutions. That's something I want to work on, is not just pointing out problems, but always bringing 3 solutions.
What I didn't love about it so much is the realization of how hard I fail in so many of these areas.
Can we just say anybody with Pastor Dave? You're like, okay.
But what I really appreciate was what Pastor Chris, you were talking about at the end, like choosing joy is something that I realize that I have to do a lot more, and something that I realize that when I choose joy instead of the frustration side of things, like there's a weight, and there's just things that are released off of me that I don't have to try to drag around for the rest of the Sunday morning or the rest of whatever event it is that I'm going to. When I choose joy, it shifts my perspective, and it absolutely shifts my heart and changes how I live, exist, love people, lead, all those sort of things.
What's that saying? A prophet isn't accepted in its own town. So Kyle says a lot of this stuff, but it just takes Chris Railey to come here and tell us everything. I have to say it was good. I mean, I can name anything, but trust is a good one. Trust is.
One of the things I took away, I mean, just talking about the situation with the young man with the candy wrapper, just talking about culture. And I think that, when you talked about that, you being a leader that took the time to pick it up, but also go and have a teaching moment. Leaders set the tone. They lead by example. You set culture by what you do. I think that's really big. That's what really stood out to me. And I think that's not just in a situation with a candy wrapper, but it extends from the highest things to the lowest things. We set the tone. We set the culture. And I think that's what makes a great organization. That's what makes people thrive. And that's what makes churches thrive. So.
It's for the recording.
It's the recording.
I was trying to take initiative. For me, I just think one of the last things that you said kind of stood out was talking about the valley. And you have faith to get in the valley, but what's your attitude in the middle of the valley and your posture that you stand, waiting for God to move on your behalf? And so that was a big thing for me. I can relate to Pastor Chris of having faith to get out there and then walking the desert for a year, literally, waiting for God to move for us to come here. So.
On that, I think it goes back to guarding your heart, not your circumstances. That was a big one for me, is it's hard to get into the valley when I've been so busy guarding my circumstances and not my heart to get there with joy. So that's powerful.
I'm just going to tag on to Pastor Tracy's, because what stood out for me is the reminder that there's joy often even in the struggle. And I think that's important because that means I'm going to grow and those around me are going to grow. We're going to walk this together.
Okay, I see Marty's hand. I saw Christina's hand. So these two, and then we'll be done.
So what I see, and I think I heard you say, Chris, was that these 5 stages of building for a healthy organization never stop. We just move on to, and especially with the last one being, what was it, high momentum. It means it's just going to start all over again. But that's the part of the adventure.
One of the last things you said too about like our people, they already know the problems, they already see the problems. And one of the questions Kyla Marcia asked us when we were newbies just to the church was like, what stinks around here? Like, you get familiar with the smells in your house? Like, what smells that we don't smell anymore? And I just think that question probably can't be asked too much. And it's a hard question to ask because, like, I don't really want to know that my house stinks because that's embarrassing. And yet, like, we do because we want to fix those things. So that was a great thing that you guys did for us.
We should ask it more. It's good. It's a good question. Okay. So good, Pastor Chris. Thank you so much for spending a weekend with us, being away from your family. And I want to close by praying for him and for his family, if that's okay. And then we're going to, sorry, no passing period. Let's just say 10:45. So go to the bathroom if you can do the bathroom. But God, I'm so thankful for Pastor Chris, for his wife, for his 3 boys, and for the ministry that he poured out here this weekend. We pray that you would return it to him tenfold. I pray for blessing. I pray that the vision that you've placed in him and his team in this season would come to pass. The miracles that need to take place, we trust you for them, Lord. And God, I ask just for great provision and favor that you would do for him and his family what they could never do for themselves. And Lord, I just thank you, thank you, thank you. Lord, may we be a church that you are pleased with. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, you all, 10:45, 2 minutes. Run.